I call the meeting to order, please? Please come with me to the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please. Councilmember
Councilmember Jacobowski, present. Councilmember Tall,
Present.
Councilmember Udi,
over here.
Vice Mayor Shepherd Romney, here. Mayor of the Day Kalaki,
Here.
and Mayor Huang.
Here.
Posting of agenda. The agenda is posted 72 hours prior to each meeting at the following locations: City Hall, 2200 Huntington Drive, the Kroll Public Library, 1890 Huntington Drive, and the Recreation Department, 1560 Pascualio Drive. For this meeting, the agenda is posted 72 hours prior to the meeting at the Kedron Valley Inn, 4778 South Road, South Woodstock, VT. The agenda is also posted on the city's website, www.cityofsanmarino.org. Public comments. The city welcomes public input. Members of the public may address the city council by completing a public comment card and giving it to the city clerk prior to the meeting. At this time, the public may address the city council on items that are not on the agenda. Pursuant to state law, the city council may not discuss or take action on issues not on the meeting agenda. Government Code Section 54,954.2. The mayor reserves the right to place limits on duration of comments. Staff may be asked to follow up on such things. Is there anyone wishing to speak at this time? No? Okay. City managers report. This is enough.
Thank you so much, both Mr. Mayors today. I do have some announcements. First things first, to business. This is an official announcement that item number 11, appeal of damaged trees at 1897 Los Robles Avenue, has been pulled from the agenda because the appellant has withdrawn their appeal. So that item will not be heard tonight. Second, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce you to our new interim community services director, Ms. Josette Espinosa. Josette has been with us about 2 weeks now and is getting into the groove, and we anticipate her staying with us until we successfully conduct a recruitment for community services director in a few months. So welcome aboard. On the note of recreation, I just want to make one additional plug for the recreation survey. As I'm sure most of the community is aware, we are in the process of trying to revision our recreation program so that it better serves the needs of the San Marino community. One of the things that we are doing in that process is to engage in some survey activities. There is an open survey link on the internet that you can go to as residents of San Marino to voice your thoughts about the community services program. That link is www.sanmarinosurvey.org/open. And we are publicizing that in our weekly briefing, and it's being publicized through our recreation department, but certainly we hope that everyone will get the word out so that we can hear for, I believe, we will make sure that it's on the city webpage if it isn't already. And we would certainly like to hear from all members of our community about what they would and would not like to see in our recreation program. So please do share your thoughts with us. How do I turn this on? Keep it. Yes. Just like that. Oh, look at that. So last but not least, my final announcement for tonight is our new website is ready to go live. This is something that we've been working on for quite some time. It has taken longer than we hoped for, longer than we expected, but we have improved our city website. We've spent quite a lot of time. I'd like to give kudos to manager in the city manager's office, Amanda Fowler in the back, who has led this process, which has been thankless and time-consuming, quite a lot of effort. But we are going to be going live with it probably tomorrow. I have a couple caveats about that. But the good news is that once we conclude the transition process, I'll be coming back to the council with a financial report. We actually will be spending significantly less money on this website than we did on the previous one, and it looks a whole lot better. It is much more user-friendly. Of course, we know that the design will not appeal to everybody. You can't please everybody, but we hope that the ease of use is very helpful for you. Just a couple of caveats, as I mentioned before, we are going to go live on this tomorrow. We've been informed that there could be a couple days of a little bit of wiggly transition, apparently, depending on the way your internet cache or cache, we had some debate about how that's pronounced today, works. You may still see the old website for a couple of days before it switches over to the new website. There almost certainly will be some glitches in the process. And so certainly we ask you to bear with us for a few days, but by next week it should be pretty consistently appearing, and we hope that you find it easier to use. And if you have suggestions, please let us know so that we can keep improving it. So thank you so much for your patience. We're very excited about launching this, and I appreciate it. That concludes my report for tonight, Mr. Mayor. I turn it back over to you.
Do I have a motion to waive for further readings?
So moved.
I'll second.
All these in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passed. Ceremonial. Presentation of certificate to William Kalaki for Mayor of the Day.
Good job. All right. Picture time. Here. Gonna take a picture of this.
You don't want to move the laptop over or something? And,
Congratulations. Nice job.
Can we get a little more information from Michael? Michael, what grade are you in? William, I'm sorry. Michael's his dad.
I'm pretty sure you're well done.
I'm in 5th grade,
In at what school?
Valentine.
And are you enjoying school?
Pretty much. A lot of book reports, but I manage.
And when you heard that you were going to be mayor of the day, were you disappointed that I was not mayor? You don't have to answer that, Michael. No, but thank you very much, and thank you. This obviously came through a donation at the parent party?
Yes, yes.
Oh, well, congratulations and thank you.
Thank you.
So I want to thank Mayor Kalaki for that. I also want to thank the parents for the donation to the Valentine's PTA. Thank you very much. All right, now back to business. Consent calendar.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if I could interrupt for just a moment. There are 3 things that I want to announce about the consent calendar in the hopes that we will be able to progress through. First is that if you do approve the minutes, which is item 4 on your agenda, there is one change that we're going to make. It is on page 126 if you're looking at the fully numbered version. If you are just looking at the minutes themselves, it is page 2 of 3 of September 27th, 2019. This was related to the discussion that you had at the Friday meeting last month about changes to the tree ordinance. And the motion as it reads in the documents is Councilmember Jacobowski moved to direct staff to prepare a tree fines plan similar to the South Pasadena model, along with mailing materials for San Marino residents, and bring it back to the City Council. We will be changing residents to property owners, so it will read along with mailing materials for San Marino property owners. So if you approve the minutes tonight, that change will be going into effect. Also, as it relates to item number 7, which is the completion of some street work that we have done. In case it is interesting to residents, which I imagine that it is, and they find it important, up on the dais, and I have some extra copies here that the city clerk will hold on to, we have a map for you with, on one side, which is the black and white side, the list of street projects that have now been completed. And on the flip side, with apologies to Councilmember Udi, in color, printed in color, we have a list of all of the things that we will be doing in the upcoming year in terms of street projects. So if members of the community are interested in seeing that, having gotten their interest piqued by this agenda item, the city clerk will have copies of those available. And
May I ask you also to post this somewhere on a public site?
sure, we can do that.
Thank you.
And then last but not least, as it relates to item 8, commitment of donations. You have general information about the donations that have been received into various accounts. In case you are interested in more detailed information, I've placed on the dais, and again, I have some extra copies here if there are members of the public that are interested, a breakdown of what those donations were for, in case you were wondering how the bigger items broke down. So the city clerk will have copies of those as well. And of course, if you would like to pull any of these items, obviously you're free to, but in case that answers some of the questions you might have, we might be able to progress. Thank you very much, Mayor.
May I ask a question of the city manager? Will these, this list be made part of item 8? And will the street be made part of, what was it, item 7?
I don't think we intended to go back and retroactively change the agenda packet. These are just some extra pieces of information intended to answer some questions, and we will certainly go with the Vice Mayor's request to put the street map on the website.
Okay, thank you.
Just for your information, the total donation numbers, I'm not showing the total.
Oh yes, that would be too small of a column. However, I assure you, it does match the total number that appears in your staff report.
I just asked for clarification. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Anybody wants to call anything? Do you have a motion?
I move to approve the consent items as amended. Thank you.
Any second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passed. Now, Treasurer's report.
City Treasurer Hahn was not able to be here tonight, so you have the report in your packet.
Now, then, new business, item 10, selection of attorney to conduct a comprehensive payroll. Okay, so we just receive and file.
So you need a motion, which the Vice Mayor is making to receive and file the report.
Do you have a second?
Well, well, it's my second, but if anybody had any questions, perhaps we should continue this till the hearing when she can't be here. I don't have any questions, but I want to give anybody an opportunity. If you do have questions,
That's
yes.
Does anybody have
Anybody have
any
questions?
questions?
Okay, then that's
Okay.
fine.
And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Seeing none? Okay, motion passed. Now, new business, item number 10.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I am pitch hitting tonight. Our new human resources manager is at a conference related to risk management this evening, so I will be presenting the staff report, so I will give it the old college try and do my best. So tonight what you have in front of you is a recommendation to enter into an agreement with the firm of Atkins and Anderson Lawyer Rudd and Romo to conduct a comprehensive payroll audit. This is actually something that Councilmember Udi brought up originally in his term, that we should look at doing a payroll audit and a human resources audit. It's good business practice. These are things that have not been done for quite some time. As you know, the ad hoc committee that formed several years ago had, I would say, many concerns about what was going on in the human resources and payroll function, and suggested that we take a look at different things in a variety of different ways. So I think that following on that, Councilmember Udi expressed some thought that we should perhaps look at doing a payroll audit and a human resources audit. We have had significant turnover in both the finance and the human resource functions since my arrival a couple of years ago and since the recommendations from the ad hoc committee. And so we are finally turning our attention to the payroll audit. It is an excellent idea to have an outside firm come out and look at our practices and be sure that we are in keeping with all of the changes in law. In the last several years, there has been at least one major lawsuit that affected the way that payroll was processed and calculated in the public sector, actually in all sectors. And it's a good idea to consult with the experts and get a sense from the outside, an independent sense of what is right, what is wrong, and how we might need to update our policies. So in the interest of protecting the community's money, it is counterintuitive, but we are certainly requesting that you approve up to $60,000 to do this payroll audit. As you know from your staff report, $60,000 was the cheapest proposal that we got. I will say that the Human Resources Manager, the interim Human Resources Manager, and I were a little stunned when we got that first proposal. And so, of course, we went out for our 3 bids, and we're even more stunned to find that that actually was the cheapest proposal of all of them. It is a very costly affair. The quote that we have from this law firm is an up to $60,000. They said in their proposal, as you have in your agenda packet, that this will probably run anywhere from $20,000 to $60,000. There is no way to approve an intermediate amount because we won't know what it is until they're done, unfortunately. So they ballparked before they've seen our city or our books that it would probably come in around $40,000, but they're giving the $60,000 number just to be safe. It is a firm that has done work in many, many, many public agencies related to labor law, FLSA law. Just a partial list includes Commerce, Montebello, various water districts, Fountain Valley, Downey, Thousand Oaks, more water districts, Santa Maria, Barstow, on and on and on and on. I don't have a comprehensive list, but they have done this sort of work, including FLSA and Carroll audits in multiple cities. They're a very well-respected law firm. The interim HR manager and I have spoken with them and are very impressed with their qualifications that they bring to the table. And certainly I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, but it is absolutely our recommendation that you authorize me to enter into an agreement for up to $60,000 to conduct the payroll.
Any questions? Yes, please.
About how long, Dr. Merlo, do you think this audit will take?
I would say probably several months.
And are you able to ascertain when the last time was we did this, and if so, what the findings were?
We are unable to ascertain. It would be my sense that certainly in recent history we have never done payroll.
Thank you.
I have no questions.
Vice Mayor?
No,
Just in terms of budgeting for this, we do not have a line item for this, and I know it exceeds the authority that you have in the city managers because of the upper level that they're requesting. So would there be a change to the general fund, or how would it be charged against?
There would be. If you approve this motion tonight, we would be essentially appropriating $60,000 to be available, would move from reserves into the general fund operating budget. And anything that was unexpended would go back.
thank you.
I don't have any question. Councilmember Udi?
Yeah, one quick question, City Manager. Does anybody on the staff have the capabilities to perform this audit, or do you think we really need to go outside?
We really need to go outside. We have people who are designated to process payroll. That is not the same thing as being an expert in payroll. And on top of that, what you want is an outside attorney who has familiarity with all of the labor law changes.
And if we appropriate this $60,000 or less than $60,000, is there somewhere else in the budget that you can cut back to make us bottom line neutral?
At this point, it's hard to know. We like to make decisions like that mostly around March and April when we know how the budget is going to look for the fiscal year. At this point, sitting in October, I can't commit to being able to save $60,000 somewhere else, and I wouldn't know where to pull it from. It certainly is possible, as we did last year, that we would come in under budget overall and end up being able to trade off the money. But I do think it's smarter for us to do this audit sooner rather than later.
Okay, thank you.
All right, then I'm going to open this to public.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please come up.
Andrew Cole, the question is for the city manager. I read in the budget that you have $30,000 for emergency spending or something. Can that be applied towards the audit? This is already October.
Actually, I don't have $30,000. The council last year lowered that to $20,000. and that is for contingent emergency issues that might pop up. It could be the council's direction to do that. I would say that in October, to remove that 20,000 would essentially nullify the point of having a contingent.
And that is because our fiscal year is
July 1st to
July.
June 30th.
Yeah, so October's only a couple
Right.
months.
So we're just fresh into it.
Any other comments? Seeing none, I'm going to close that portion. Now let's go back to the comments. Councilmember Toll.
I think that this is, it seems as though it is long overdue. And in order to aid us in the future to assure that our payroll is properly being performed so that we're neither wasting money or exposing it some other way, that it's something that we need to do. And really, I think this is a one-time cost, at least for a long while, so it's not something that's going to pop up all the time and will protect us in the future. So I'm in favor of it.
Councilmember Jakubowski.
Thank you. I have to confess, I have struggled with the 60,000, but to comfort myself and to maybe share a few facts with the others, I think I see my colleague Hal Haridian in the back of the room from the ad hoc committee. There were 5 of us who issued a report in early January of 2017 after reviewing the operations at City Hall for 1 year. And I'd like to just give a brief quote from that. Payroll procedures fail to ensure that the city pays only for work performed. Employees report their time worked in various ways. Multiple schedules limit management oversight. Complicated worksheets are developed by the payroll clerk to determine amounts due to any employee earning at different rates for different jobs. And we recommend that time be collected using a computerized system, which I know we are not yet there. But it says both hours and the nature of the assignment or the project should also be collected. It goes on to say, we recommend a thorough review of work schedules and immediate changes to conform with labor laws. So I would be delighted if we could get that item put to bed.
Councilmember Udi.
Thank you, Mayor. I like Councilman Tull, believe this to be a one-time expense. I would encourage the city manager to go find that money somewhere else so we're net neutral on the budget. I think this is a smart management activity to take on. I get concerned when I hear practices around payroll because wage and hour issues are some of the most litigious around. So I think this, I go into the topic group now, something we need to do.
Vice Mayor?
I agree with the comments made before. I think it's necessary. And if 60 is the lowest quote, then that is the best quote to get the job done. So I appreciate that you did go out for multiple quotes to confirm, and that's an important step, and I hope also that it'll be useful for everybody and avoid any potential problems in the future.
Yes, I also had the same concern, but I guess this is the first time in under 6 years of the city, so yes, maybe we can do it.
Henry Huntington was in here accounting.
That's what they pay.
Okay, so do I have a motion?
Sure. I move to approve the agreement for special legal services for Atkinson, Anderson, Loya, Rudd, and Romero to conduct a comprehensive payroll audit for the city of San Marino and appropriate $60,000 from the unapproved fund balance of the general fund into account 101-4150-4150-0000 Human Resources Other Contract Services to fund the audit.
Will you accept an amendment? I think you meant to say appropriate $60,000 from the unappropriated fund balance.
I didn't say that?
You said unapproved.
Ooh, unappropriated. Thank you so much, yes.
I will second as amended.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Jakubowski,
Yes.
Councilmember Tall,
Yes.
Councilmember Udi,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Shepherd Rami,
Yes.
Mayor Huang.
Yes, motion passed. Item 11, appeal of damaged trees at 1897, oh, that was, oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. Now let's move to public hearing, item 12.
Thank you, Mayor. The item for 1288 Oak Grove Road applies to an appeal before the City Council on the decision of the Planning Commission to deny a project that includes a variance, a conditional use permit, and a design review action. The project includes a proposal to construct a first and second story addition to an existing house with less than the required rear yard setback. The project also included a variety of front yard walls and pilasters, as well as a subterranean garage that I believe held about 8 parking spaces. This item was presented to the Planning Commission on July 24th, 2019. At this meeting, the Commission was concerned about the significant amount of remodeling work being done to a potential historic house. They were also concerned about the compatibility of the additions to the house, as well as to the overall size of the subterranean parking garage. Although the applicant had requested a continuance of the matter at the hearing, the Commission motioned to deny the project and it was denied. The intent of this meeting is to consider one of the 4 options as identified in the staff report. Based off the willingness of the applicant to adjust the project, which has been identified in the appeals letter, staff supports the option to remand the project back to the Planning Commission with a direction to the Planning Commission. It looks as if the applicant is willing to adjust the project to eliminate a variety of the entitlements, including the conditional use permit to eliminate the subterranean parking garage. And so based off the willingness of the applicant to make adjustments, staff recommends the council select option C and refer the matter back to the commission with instructions to allow the applicant to submit a revised project to the city for further proceedings. And I open for questions.
Councilmember Udi?
No questions, it's fairly clear, thank you.
Councilmember Tolt?
Yes, I do. Director Cervantes, I recall there being a lot, it was a very contentious hearing.
Correct.
And part of that contention was based, at least in my view, of the applicant stating that they had a right to do their hobby, which was remarkable in my opinion. But having looked at the proposals in the letter of August 1st, 2019, to the Mayor and City Council from LCRAI, without having the advantage of looking over the plans that were originally reviewed by the Planning Commission, will any of this stuff remain contentious, or will the Planning Commission be able to resolve this issue one way or the other without further problems?
If you look at Exhibit A, which is the first site plan that shows 2 back-to-back garages adjacent to the side property line. Garage number 1, which is closest to the street, is in fact in the front yard area of the property, which would require a variance that was not part of the initial application process.
Does not require or will
require
An
variance.
additional, yes.
Because when you have an accessory structure like a garage that's in the front yard, that requires a variance plus also certain setback requirements. So there alone, you have 2 additional variances for that project. So I would
And who put in does not require variance?
repeat that, please.
Who put in the language I'm looking at in Exhibit A to the letter, it says does not require variance.
That would have been the applicant who did that, not the city.
So there's still going to be contention. Oh, okay. How about some of the other stuff?
So the second Exhibit A, which includes a renovation of the existing garage plus an additional attached garage, although it still needs a significant amount of work, the accessory structures are in the backyard where they belong. And so there still needs to be a finesse to that project, but I think that in addition to this level of project plus the renovation to the home, we can get it to the point where there's a significant drop-off in concern.
Because this doesn't have the type of detail that I would have liked to see to
Right.
make some determination of whether or not it would be a further waste of time to send it back to the Planning Commission, because I recall there being a lot of issue with respect to what they intended to do in the reconstruction of this historic house, but, okay, did you have something else?
Yeah, just one more piece. As you're aware in looking at the staff report, the original application included a significant amount of work to the extent of exceeding the 50% threshold. And so if this is remanded back to the Planning Commission, I will work with the applicant to get the scope of work in terms of the remodeling of the existing house much further down to a more comfortable position.
If we were just to uphold the Planning Commission's findings, they then would have to wait a year in
Correct.
order to do that?
Correct.
Is there any way that we could, by motion, change that to 6 months? We cannot.
No, the code is specific to say 1 year, a 1 year period where the applicant cannot return with a substantially similar project, as verbatim for the code.
Okay. So, okay, thank you.
Since I can't tell by sight, I will ask you questions if the applicant is not here. Will the applicant be speaking?
I don't see the applicant here.
Oh, they are not here.
They are not here.
All righty.
I was made aware today that they were going to be here, so I'm not sure what's going on.
Maybe they got last minute tickets to the Dodger.
And they have Dodger blues.
Okay. Yes, I would have liked to have spoken, but okay, we're done. Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
No, I asked him first.
Okay. I had questions. First of all, there's so many, if I'm in the existing project, we have 2 variances, 2 conditional use permits, and 3 design review actions that Planning Commission needed to take. And assuming one of the 2 garage plans will go in, we're going to actually be adding 2 additional requirements on that. So there will be 9. Do we have other projects that require this many? Is this an unusual set of circumstances?
That's a great question. Historically, the Planning Commission, when they see projects like this that require a substantial amount of entitlements, they traditionally have not accepted those types of projects.
Okay.
And so here, you're absolutely correct in that we're adding an additional variance for one of these projects that they're looking
Either
to
way.
bring back.
And possibly 2. Right, so the number will go up, I understand, and possibly go down if perhaps some of the other things will change. And also, I had a high degree of concern as well after reading the report of the, I'm sorry, is it I don't know the proper name for the historical review and the CEQA analysis that we talked about even right before this. There was such a significant amount of work being done. And even in the letter, it's page 228 of, which is I guess the appeal letter, they talk about replacing all the windows and doors to composites or compatible woods and things like that, versus specifically in this summary of the qualities that make this house historically significant, it is the windows and doors, and the very fact that so many of the original ones currently exist. Am I reading this properly?
And you are.
And so they're going to remove all windows and doors?
Right.
And is it your understanding that that would change the historical significance of a property if all the original windows and doors are removed?
It's a possibility if they're looking to replace the windows with like-for-like, for example, if their windows are casement windows that are wood and they're looking to replace with like-for-like, then there's the argument that that the project is not going to result in the loss of a historic resource, at least how it's defined by CEQA and the government code section related to CEQA. Again, it really depends on the type of window in this specific example that they're looking to replace.
Okay, and we don't have any information about that?
Not at this point, not tonight, no.
Okay, and was that something that, because we don't have a lot of information from Planning Commission other than the vote, and the resolution, I believe, before us. Was that beyond I know you brought up the subterranean garage and the size of it being 8 or 9 cars, I can't remember, I was there as well, but there were a number of other factors that concerned the Planning Commission that made them go to the denial decision to deny. And I was wondering, were the windows and doors, for example, the total replacement one of the concern areas? And were there others that you can inform me of?
Yeah, the overall concern of the Planning Commission was that there was a significant amount of work in general to the home. And there was a discussion related to whether the amount of work being done to this home was going to eliminate the fact that the home was originally designed by a master architect. And so there was a lot of discussion as to that fact. The architect did a decent job at explaining that. We have yet to vet that sort of situation where the argument is that if a modern day architect gets a hold of a historic home, does it now become a piece of that modern day architect? That is something that we haven't vetted in the past, nor with this project. The only thing that we had to look at was with respect to, obviously, this being a potential historic resource, and how does it impact CEQA in terms of very specific findings. And those specific findings are in what the staff report refers to as an environmental checklist. And in that checklist, it identifies, I believe, 3 or 4 criteria that essentially get to the point of, is this a loss of a historic resource? There are pieces of historic resource elements, there's archaeological elements, there's human remains elements. And so, based off of just the technicality of CEQA related to the project, we did not feel that the project was going to result in a loss of a historic resource.
Right, but the Planning Commission did.
They did.
And they also spoke about the compatibility with the neighborhood.
Correct.
Was that another criteria that they did not find in favor of the applicant?
Correct.
Thank you.
I don't have any question. I'm going to open this to public hearing. Seeing none, I'm going to close up the portion. Comments? Councilmember Jakubowski.
Well, unfortunately, we have neither the applicant nor their architect here. In order to have had my support on 7 actions, which is just really going over the top, I would have had to have heard a huge commitment to drastic changes going forward, and I'm not hearing that, so I don't think there's a lot of options.
Councilmember Toll.
I concur.
Councilmember Udi.
It just feels to me like there are a lot of moving parts here, so I support staff's recommendation to refer it back to the commission.
Vice Mayor.
I believe we should uphold Planning Commission. I agree for the reasons stated before. I don't see a commitment, and I don't think the letter speaks to significant enough changes to make this a continuance, and that we should do anything contrary to what Planning Commission decided, because I believe they took a significant amount of time, had the benefits of full plans, and the appellant there to ask questions and engage with, and without those things, I would not have returned the decision of our Planning Commission.
Well, I concur with Councilmember Jakubowski. I'm surprised that the applicant's not here. Anyway, so do we have a...
And actually, that kind of bothers me because Adil Chang is a very respected architect. If she said she was going to be here, I would have expected her to be here. And I want to leave, there's part of me that wants to leave open the option, there might have been an emergency situation or that required her attendance elsewhere. Because my gut reaction is to uphold the commission because they didn't appear, but I also know the architect and I find her typically very, very responsible.
Should we continue this, or?
I don't.
But it's the applicant's responsibility to make one simple phone call, and if the applicant didn't, then the architect could have. There's 2 parties that could have made a 30-second phone call.
They have your cell phone?
So the fact that nobody did.
I move that we uphold the decision of the Planning Commission and period, that's
Yeah,
all.
that's it.
Okay.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Needs to be
Roll call. Okay, roll call, please.
Councilmember Jacobowski,
Yes.
Councilmember Tall,
No.
Councilmember Udi,
No.
Vice Mayor Shepherd Romney,
Yes.
Mayor Huang.
Yes.
And
Motion.
I just want to make clear, is my no is based upon the fact that she's good and she's very reliable, and her not being here really concerns me, especially on a project of this magnitude for her. But I'll accept I'll accept the decision as is.
Okay, motion passed. Item 13. Please.
For any of you that are concerned, it's 3-0 Dodgers.
I was taking the
That's the most important
Oh,
step.
sorry.
No, I wasn't.
Sorry about that. I had to do that. So the intent of this code amendment is to not only codify the use of Stillman property as a school in a residential zone, but to further justify the long-standing use and activities of the property with respect to the use by the city of San Marino as well as our recreation department. In addition, the language in the code would allow for a third-party vendor to use the property in a similar fashion and to operate a school use. When initially drafted, staff included provisions in the code that reduced the possibility of this code applying to all residential properties. Although staff incorporated the conditional use permit requirements, staff also included minimum lot size requirements as well as minimum building size requirements. Upon further review of the ordinance, the Planning Commission agreed that the conditional use permit is a necessity, but they also felt that the requirements, which is a list of the code provisions, were not necessary. So they adopted the ordinance with recommendation to only require the CUP. So in summary, staff recommends that the language that was drafted by staff initially that includes the prerequisites is what staff is recommending at this point. There are other options though. The Planning Commission, of course, recommends the adoption of the ordinance utilizing only the CUP process. There's a third option that's being presented before you tonight, which would maintain the CUP provision and would also eliminate all the other prerequisites except for that 100,000 square foot lot size requirement. And the intent of that is to allow for the opportunity of the city to lease the property to third-party vendors that are wanting to use the property outside of a school use. For example, some other kind of university allowance or a business or what have you. But essentially, if adopted the way it's been drafted, it would only allow for a school to operate there as a third party or also by the city. So for council's reference, I did include all options that we are presenting tonight in the staff report and also the one handed to you before tonight. So staff recommends that the City Council waive further reading and introduce with or without amendments for first reading by title ordinance number 1913-56.
Any questions? Councilmember Udi?
No, sir, thank you.
Councilmember Tolt?
All right, yes, I do. Just to clarify, there are page 359, 360, and 361 was that which was approved by the Planning Commission?
No.
359 is the original report or the original ordinance.
Okay.
The ordinance with all the strike-throughs are the Planning Commission's recommendations. And the one before you tonight is the third option.
And really the only difference between the Planning Commission's approved ordinance and what you have proposed is the 100,000 square feet.
Correct.
How many properties in San Marino would this apply to?
That's a great question. I did not look into
I
it.
only ask great questions.
I'd have to get back to you on that one. So obviously this property, the Thornton Estate would qualify. The USC property would qualify. And I believe that would be it.
But they'd still have to do
The CUP is still a requirement.
the conditional use permit. Okay. Because I would worry about that SC property. Suddenly them coming in and wanting to use it as some sort of annex to one of their
Right, can we make it sorry.
No, it would still require a
Site
conditional
specific.
use permit, but
Right.
that would be my concern, because,
You're opening up more.
yeah, and I'm sure the neighbors would not be happy about that, but,
And of course, I had the same concern when I initially drafted it. That's why I included the 5 provisions. But again, the council can consider any of these options depending on how you see fit.
Well, can I ask a question? Or
I'm done, thank you.
I'd like to hear more because I'm still feeling a little confused, so please ask.
Is there a way to make the ordinance site specific?
I'm going to refer that to council.
Or maybe a city attorney?
It's better if it would apply to a category of properties.
Yep.
That's why we stuck with the 100,000. That's why the 100,000 square feet is a good threshold. Because it
I'm sorry,
basically-
say it one more time.
by restricting it to 100,000 square foot size properties, you've eliminated so many other properties.
Right, no, that's definitely true. I just don't know, for example, the legal measurements of some of the other large properties that we run into that they're owned by, or what use those could be put to as well. It's only a handful of situations, so that's why I was wondering if it could be modified to say something like former Stoneman school site or something, because this is really what we're dealing with, right? This is,
From a planning and zoning perspective, it's typically better if we can come up with some sort of objective criteria, such as this, the number of square feet. If you like, we can certainly try to devise some other things. I didn't see in here, for example, the building size criteria, if you wanted to have that added, for example. I mean, we could try to, Mr. Sparkes may have some other ideas of some other things to include.
because the idea behind this, and perhaps I'm wrong, is that the issue of subdividing the property or having multiple uses we want to stay away from. So that's why the idea was a whole campus is used by one entity going forward. So this was drafted with that in mind. However, I thought in section A, perhaps from planning commission's discussion and otherwise listening to it, that this was limiting it to a certain, going down a very narrow road, meaning it's a K-8 school. And again, that was more limiting than we needed to be because we don't know the potential use. We don't have that filled in yet. And there might be concerns, for example, from the school district anyway. So we wanted to get away from that as a group, as a concept, and say that the whole thing has to be used by one party for educational reasons, but not be so limited. So that's what I thought I was hearing, and that's why they were perhaps restricting or took out that language of the under the A with the 5 factors. But I know you.
To follow up on your comment, I appreciate what our attorney is telling us, trying to stick with a class, and that it would be, in this case, probably 3 properties. One of those properties is very large and is still undergoing construction. And I have concerns about the future because I know there's been various uses suggested for the future of that property. So unfortunately, I think we really need to get quite specific, as specific as we legally can in dealing with this.
To try to separate this out.
Correct.
Or individualize it, right?
I too was also concerned about the subdivision part of it, where of course if even though you have all these provisions, one can certainly take a number of properties, subdivide them to get to 1,000 square feet. The general plan would not support that because they essentially would put a very large piece of property amongst much smaller properties. And the general plan does make reference to discouraging properties that are not consistent in size to the neighborhood.
Right.
And so I know that I dealt with a subdivision prior where that was being proposed, and I had the ability to deny that because of that general plan language.
what I would prefer to do is to continue this and assess how many properties are indeed subject to this provision, so that perhaps we could better apply something that that would allow for such along Huntington Drive, but not in the estate division or something like that.
And also see if the size differential, I mean, if we even said 110 and that was other ones are all drop out. I mean, I don't know what the relative sizes are, but that might also be a way that's general enough to suit your objective criteria, but might be able to hone in on that one side. So it might be another way to approach it as well, or and location related to.
Those are all appropriate.
Fine.
I have no further questions.
Any other question?
No, sorry.
No? No more? Okay, then I'm going to open this to public hearing. Any questions? Any public hearing? Seeing none? Okay, now back to comments. Comment? Councilman Motul?
I would like to see continued to assess exactly how many properties will be impacted. I do like the 100,000 alternative only, and as a restriction along with the conditional use permit, but I want to determine what type of impact that we're really dealing with.
Councilmember Jakubowski?
Concur.
Councilmember Yudi?
I also agree.
Vice Mayor?
I agree.
Concur. So do you have a motion?
I move to continue item number 13, an ordinance of the City of San Marino amending Chapter 23 of the San Marino City Code pertaining to schools in residential zone to next meeting, next Wednesday.
Could we do are you ready at the Friday meeting? I only say this because your November agenda is shaping up to be significantly larger.
And we only have one November and only one December. Correct.
I can do that.
Okay.
So the
October
next
25th.
Thank you.
October 25th.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say
Can you have a roll call?
roll call again. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Jakubowski,
Yes.
Councilmember Tall,
Yes.
Councilmember Udi,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Shepherd Rami,
Yes.
and Mayor Huang.
Yes, motion passed.
He did not.
Okay.
You may carry on at will, Mayor.
Public comment, written communications or public writing distributed? None. Council reports?
Yes, I'd like to report on one issue. May I? For any of the folks who may see this subsequently, I'd like to comment on the first Monday of the month meetings that are held at the Crowell Library in the Barth Room. Many people missed a very, very helpful informational meeting this week. And don't be deterred by titles. This one was called Elder Abuse and Domestic Violence. I cannot tell you the resources that were made available for those people who did attend, the incredible information. If you read our police report, you will see that there are numerous incidents of folks being taken advantage of financially. It doesn't mean that you're going to, but to hear about the tools and what's available out there. And we do have people who come forward and want some support. So don't judge books by their cover going forward. Please come out to these first Monday meetings. Staff puts a lot of work into making these presentations, and of the ones I have attended, there hasn't been a single one that hasn't had significant value. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other council report? Okay, City Council calendar?
Now, it will remain as it is for the rest of the year as far as we know.
Okay, public comment?
Rest of the calendar.
Yes, Mr. Ruck, please come up.
I wanted to comment on two items. I hope you're getting a few minutes, Steve. Item number one, I'm circulating an article that appeared in the LA Times concerning the cost of the Huntington Library for basically residents and attendees. And I'd like to think that I was responsible at least for you getting the first $100,000 from those tigers up there on the hill. It's now 150 because I've been arguing for a public environmental impact fee on them for many years, and the council for some reason doesn't want to deal with that. And maybe it's because you think you have some kind of cultural obligation to support an organization like that. But if you look at that, you see, well, the Getty doesn't charge anything. They're saying here that if you take a family of 4 in there, it's going to cost you between $84 and $160 to get in the door. It goes up from there. And also mentions the fact that they're sitting on a $450 million endowment. Places like the Getty and others charge nothing to get in. So here we sit in this city, 120 acres. If you divided that into quarter-acre sites and put $2 million house on each one of those, just with the 1% tax that you would get from the Howard Jarvis Proposition 13 would be somewhere around $10 million a year, and that doesn't include parcel taxes and all the other fees. I checked once before, you got 700,000 people coming in there, and they pay less than $5,000 for their sewers, and they pump our aquifer dry and pay nothing. So and then we provide police and fire, paramedic service, and a lot of other benefits to them. The only thing we get out of it, and when I check with the Franchise Tax Board, out of 10% sales tax that are applicable to people buying stuff at the store and for the lunches and what have you in the restaurant, it's practically nothing because we only get 1% of that 10% as a city. So once again, I raise the issue, and this article is the basis for it. That place was founded by 4 of the worst robber barons in the history of California. I've raised that issue before. Huntington, Leland Stanford, Charlie Crocker, and the 4th one I've forgotten, but he had the famous old hotel up in San Francisco, and I can't remember the name of it, but anyway, there were 4 of them. And they had the Central Pacific Railroad, and they robbed the central people in California blind until the administration of Hiram Johnson came in and introduced changes, and also the initiative process and the other process for people having some control, the initiative and also the other So I suggest once again that we should evaluate going for an environmental impact fee for them. I recommended initially $2 a head. That would be $1.5 million a year that we could get in revenue. And you could raise or lower that, but still, I think that those people should be paying something. Those taxpayers of San Marino should not have to pay for that. They bring those people in, they tear up our infrastructure. We had a woman in here from Oxford just a couple of weeks ago complaining about her streets and what have you. They tear up the environment. We have to pay for that as taxpayers. We get nothing from those people up there. And when Steve Kovalik was there, he was getting $450,000 a year. They brought the woman in. They paid her $700,000 to $800,000. She had a 4-year contract. They wiped her out after 2 years. Supposedly she was going to write a book, but there was a rumor floating around. There were other reasons they got rid of her. They brought the other lady in, and they're paying her $700,000 to $800,000 a year, plus all the other people in there that they're paying huge salaries for. I think that San Marino should evaluate that and get some money out of those people. They shouldn't sit up there like a sacred monument on the top of the hill. One other item I wanted to discuss, and I hope you give me a few minutes, Steve. We all got this taxpayers' debt thrown on our front porch. It deals with the election coming up, and of course it advocates the write-in candidacy for Andrew Cole. Of course, two gentlemen, I'm assuming you got that.
I need to recuse myself? Just kidding.
And the other thing, of course, is it talks about the obligation of CalPERS, which we all know is way less than what we are dealing with. It could be as much as $120 million. And they also don't talk about the CalSTRS obligation, which is also supremely in deficit. Sooner or later, you're going to have to deal with that problem. Last time the CalPERS came after us for that bond issue, it was about $7.5 million, and it was declared unconstitutional. But at some point in time, they will come after us for some money. The only way you'll know what the true obligation is if you decided that you want to bail out and go to a 401k plan. I advocated that about 30 years ago or 25 years ago, and nobody wanted to play with it, but it was reasonable. Now, God only knows how much it would cost us to bail out, but I say that the only way out of this thing is either a Chapter 9 bankruptcy, and unfortunately, a couple of the cities have taken that. San Bernardino, Stockton, they bail out the CalPERS at the expense of the bondholders and the other obligations that you have in a bankruptcy. And so the issue did not get addressed. And of course, the state of California, it goes back to Alexander Hamilton's time when he bailed out the 13 colonies, and they don't permit the state to take bankruptcy, but any instrumentality within the state can take bankruptcy. And the other way out of this thing, other than bankruptcy, would be monetization, and that is in terms of runaway inflation and printing enough money to give everybody the money. But we were talking about going after the payrolls and what have you in terms of analysis. I think that's good. If you look at this thing here, it gives a cost of all the San Marino 218 paying benefits over 70,000, and it's tremendous. If you compare those with comparable jobs in private industries, they're way over the median salary for comparable positions. I shudder every time people have a conference with the employees because I know it's going to be more money and more benefits. And you do nothing about it because they have the pressure on you. But on the other hand, it is a factor that we're going to have to deal with. And this guy here, he deals with it. And I've dealt with it on many occasions here in presenting the issue. But sooner or later, they're going to have to deal with it. And Mr. Cole, of course, he wants to let a referendum and deal with it at you two gentlemen's expense. But in any case, I present this again as a public comments because I think maybe I've heard at various times 70 to 80% of our budget goes into personnel costs, and that's a huge sum. And it only gets worse, and it's not going to get any better. And sooner or later, somebody's going to have to address it. If this council doesn't address it, it may eventually go to bankruptcy like San Bernardino or Stockton, or I think there were 2 or 3 other cities that took bankruptcy. But that's the one way out. The other way is monetization. Like I say, printing money. So I address those 2 issues for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment?
Paul?
Seeing none? Paul? Okay, then the meeting's going to be adjourned to Friday, October 25th at 8:30 a.m. Thank you.